I'm with the Major.
For his personal consumption only?
Yes.
That's penally unsocial on Earth, you know that?
Hi, this is the Professional Amateur Hour coming to you with another review. This week I checked out Saturn III, and this 1980 film was directed by Stanley Donen and John Barry, and stars Farrah Fawcett, Kirk Douglas, and Harvey Keitel, among others of course. So what is the story of Saturn III? Well, this one is about this research base on a moon of Saturn, and they get this delivery, and the delivery is of this robot that is designed to help them, with their research and try to figure out how to feed Earth back on Earth. And of course, as always with scientific robots, this one kind of goes bad and starts attacking the crew. What will happen though? Well, for that, you gotta watch the movie and find out. Alright, so let's discuss Saturn III. Well, with this one, I didn't watch Saturn 1 or 2, and that's actually a joke. Saturn III is the name of the base, and so it's just, Saturn III, it's only this one movie. And I had always kind of heard of this movie, kind of as like a sci-fi classic. And so I had some, time this week on a Friday, and I thought, let's try this classic movie. Why not? And so I did ultimately, press play on it. And I can certainly see why it's a classic. It certainly is an interesting film with kind of what's going on, and the robot itself is really cool. And it just kind of seems like it has elements of different ones. Certainly there's like an Aliens vibe with the ship itself. There's elements of kind of like Metropolis, or at least some of the imagery, or at least opening imagery of the movie kind of looks like Metropolis. And so I can certainly see how it kind of fits in kind of classic sci-fi. And for me, that's what kind of made it interesting overall, seeing what this kind of older version of sci-fi looks like or is. And it certainly has this 1980 flair to it, where it still has kind of holdovers from the 70s, where a lot of the elements of a story involve characterization and characters talking to each other rather than, now in 2025, where it's all about the big spectacle of everything. This one has very little spectacle, and it's really just kind of people talking in rooms. And at the same time, that's not always bad. After all, here on this channel, we enjoy kind of low budget stuff, and this does have that low budget feel to it with all the rooms and stuff. But you can see kind of with the actors and then the set as well, it's not particularly low budget either. And so there's lots of stuff that go into it that certainly, work for the time and place that it, happened in. Other than that, I did want to press play on this one for an additional reason. I saw that Farrah Fawcett was in it, and I saw some image of her in kind of like this lingerie outfit from this movie. And even though I said, lots of it is just people talking in rooms, some of those rooms involve Farrah Fawcett in lingerie. So I certainly, like those parts. She even has a wardrobe malfunction for, half a second, so you get to see a nip. But that's it. That's the whole kind of nudity involved with this one. And so Farrah Fawcett certainly does a good job. I like, watching her, run around this spaceship or space base. And I think the other characters do a good job too. Certainly they're, big name actors, or at least now they are. And they do a good job, certainly, I think. And so just kind of their dynamic all together works as well. They're, annoying each other, then they gotta work together, then they're, enemies again. And it's just all kind of fun interpersonal stuff in the end. So certainly acting, I would say, works with this one. Also, I had heard that the robot in this one was something else, or at least, a classic kind of design that people, actually know. And I enjoyed the robot design in this one. It's this big, hulking kind of robot. It's got its, muscles and stuff. But then it has this dumb little head. It's like a little head on a little arm. And so it's just got two little laser eyes just going around. And so its head is kind of non-existent. And I don't know, it just kind of adds to, I would say, the flavor of this robot. I think the robot's name is Hector. And so Hector is, certainly something unique. That's a head that you won't see on any other robot. And then his body is just so massive as well. So they're certainly going with kind of a more of imposing kind of idea with the robot. And I would say it works to an extent because of that head. That head just kind of makes it what were you thinking about this robot? What were you thinking about the design? I understand they're probably working with the practicality of it, and that's certainly a very practical little head and that you could control pretty easily. And so it all works, to get certainly the vibe of it, where this hulking thing is this, about to go crazy and you never know what it's thinking because it doesn't really have a face or anything. So I would say the robot certainly works in this one. What else? Oh, with this one, well, you guys know the professional amateur hour here. I love these bad movies. And I gotta say, there were a few kind of laugh out loud moments in this one. Maybe it's because it was just, a Friday night and I was having a bev. But man, there were some times I just started cracking up with this one. I'll, try to be spoiler free, but one time the robot, he's crazy at this point and he like kills somebody. I won't tell you who, but then he wears that face on his stupid little head and you're just like, oh my gosh. And it's just like funny. I don't know. And there's a few other things where it's just kind of laugh out loud funny. And so, yeah, certainly there are elements of it where a bad movie lover can enjoy it as much as, someone who's looking for that classic kind of sci-fi. And that brings me to what doesn't work with this film. Well, certainly it is paced very differently than movies today. If you're really into movies today, this is not the same type of movie. It still has kind of holdover feels from like the 70s where it is about characters and talking, and that's how you kind of get, information across is by talking. And so it does have a slower pace. You do have to be able to sit with a movie and just kind of, go along with it. And, see these characters talk to each other. Like there's no action set pieces. In fact, that's kind of my next point too as well. Like there's no real action in it because, certainly they're working with this practical robot. So they do have certain limitations, I would say. It's not going to, run up walls or jump over anything, but it will, get tripped up by something or whatnot. So there is that element where it is classic for a reason, right? The classics are not the modern stuff that, you might love even more. It is a movie that you do have to be patient with. You do have to sit through. You might grab your phone a few times here or there when they're, chit-chatting or whatever, but ultimately it does have that slower pace. And, that certainly will be up to you, like how you kind of experience movies and what kind of movies you're into. So if you are able to have, longer concentration span, I would say you could certainly turn this one on. Another thing with this movie is it's clearly, trying to be, kind of a horror-esque film, but then the lighting is all off. And so everything is, super well lit. And of course, Farrah Fawcett's there. You want her to be well lit, right? So it's kind of this odd mixture of things. It certainly has this kind of unevenness to it where, they're trying to do the horror, but then it's too well lit and they're trying to do the talking stuff, but then they want to do the horror. And I don't know. It's just, yeah, it just kind of works together for what it is. It's interesting that way. It's just, a little bit uneven. And so would I recommend this film? Well, if you do enjoy sci-fi, I would say press play with it. It does certainly have more of a lighter feel too, especially with more brighter light and everything like that. But ultimately, yeah, it's a classic sci-fi film that if you like sci-fi, I would say is, a fine watch. And as for a rating, well, the year is 2025 right now. And I'm sure in the year, 1980, it was probably an above average film. But for our standards today, I'm just going to say it's an average film. Certainly a 5, I think, is a well-deserved thing. It has a very different feel to it than any sci-fi thing that comes out today. But that's, a product of the time. So I think 5 is very well, deserved. And with that being said, I think that's all I wanted to say. So like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.